Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We will be starting the webinar in just a few minutes past the hour. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. The webinar will start in just a few moments. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are in the country. This is Erica Collins, Vice President of Akara Partners Marketing and Creative Agency and Executive Director of Akara's e-learning division, the Aesthetic Business Institute. We thank you for joining the Aesthetic Business Institute's webinar session today. This webinar will cover Reopening Your Aesthetic Practice, Systems and Tools to Implement with Francis Exacunzo. Francis is the Chief Experience Officer of MedSpa 10, Chairman of the Aesthetic Business Institute, and owner and founder of Akara Partners. He is credited with the creation of the first medical spa in the world and is a well-known speaker in the aesthetic medical industry. Throughout his career, Acunzo has actively acquired aesthetic medical practices to build profitable companies. In total, he has executed upon 24 acquisitions involving more than 60 locations. In addition, he has spearheaded the securing of over $100 million to fund his ventures and support Akara's clients' efforts. Akunzo has personally experienced running numerous aesthetic practices during recessionary periods and specifically led the charge in turning around 25 locations through the 2008 recession. Today, Francis will cover the staffing, operations, marketing, financing, legal, and clinical considerations for application in order to get your practice ready for doors open post-COVID-19 closures. Should you have any questions, please feel free to submit them using the questions feature on the GoToWebinar. We will attempt to answer all questions submitted within our allotted time. And with that, I turn this over to Francis to begin the webinar.
Thank you, Erica. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon to some of you. I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about relaunching your aesthetic practice, your med spa, in this current uncertain environment. Let's take a look at where we're at right now. Now, our practice doors, our med spa doors, have been closed for up to 8 weeks right now. And over the next 45 days, or even sooner, because I know some of you are open, we are relaunching our businesses. And we're relaunching them in a very uncertain time. We can't take away from the fact that we all have concerns about going back to normal business. So really, we're not going to be able to. We have to modify how we conduct business. Cash flow is becoming urgent for many practices. We took a survey, the Aesthetic Business Institute did a survey that showed 93% of practices applied for some type of aid, either EIDL or PPP money, the practice program money, the loan, and only 50% as of right now has that money in. I anticipate that most will receive at least the PPP loan. So it's just going to be a matter of time. Interestingly enough, from what we're hearing from practices that have opened their doors recently, as recent as last week, there's a pretty high demand on the injectable side. So at least we know that. Not sure about the plastic surgery procedures that we do, laser procedures, but definitely on the injectable side and also on the clinical skincare side as well. We still have our team on furlough, most of us, though that's changing as we reopen our practices. Many people, though, that are receiving their PPP loan money, the moment that money goes into your bank account is when you have to start spending it. You have 8 weeks from the point of receiving the funds. So even if your doors aren't open, most people will bring their staff back on at that point. We'll talk a little bit more about that a bit later. All right, we've got to start getting mentally and physically ready to open. This is going to be hard work. It's just like relaunching your practice as you did however many years ago. And you need to know you are prepared for this, right? You have 6 to 9 months or even longer ahead of you where life is going to be very different and the way we conduct business will be very different. And you have to be ready for this challenge. You're back in startup mode, as I said. You were down to 0 for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or more, and now you have to rebuild that. I mean, the one nice thing is you don't have to build out your practice. That is there, but think about your day one when you opened your practice. How much work was that going forward? You have to ask yourself, do you have enough working capital? How much do you have lined up? How much do you have in the bank? How much do you have from the PPP loan? How much do you have access to from the EIDL? You need capital to relaunch your practice, to relaunch your med spa. Really important. You can't do it without some money, at least. So The wisest thing to do is be prepared and plan. If you're not open yet, start your planning process. If you've just opened, get down to making sure you're planning for what's happening now. The key functional areas that we want to focus on with your relaunch: staffing, operations, marketing, communications, financial, legal, regulatory, and clinical. This is going to take a little bit of time. I think we can keep this under an hour with questions and answers, but understand that this webinar, there's a lot to go through. There's a lot to implement. And it's important when implementing these things to remember, my list here is not the perfect list. We haven't gone through this before, but we've talked to many nurses, doctors, and practitioners and owners of medical spas and aesthetic practices, and we've collated this list. It's fairly complete, but for the webinar, I didn't take 100% of what's on the list itself, which you do receive because you're attending this webinar. I took the most important things and are going to present to you today those most important things. But in addition, I would recommend implement everything and anything you can think of. I would love to hear from you to add to this list, right? We're gonna learn from the field here. I'll make the list better. We'll send it back out to everyone. But in the meantime, implement everything. Wait a couple of weeks. Are you finding there's redundancies? Do you need to make modification? I'm sure you will. So start off as much as possible and pull back if you see it's okay to pull back. Okay, start off with, let's talk about staffing a little bit. Assess your staffing needs. What's going on? What are you opening? How are you opening up? Are you extending your hours? Do you need more staffing? Are you trying to staff so that you don't have as many team members on at the same time? How is that looking? How is that working? You're opening up another day or two. If you aren't open Saturdays or Sundays, are you opening up the weekend? If you furloughed or laid off your staff, bring them back. Only the most critical at first, unless, of course, the PPP loan has hit. Then you have to abide by that. There's this 25% payroll reduction rule. So you have to bring back everyone, most likely, so that you are not reducing your payroll by more than 25%. So if you did a payroll reduction of 20%, you're okay. But if you decide that you don't want to bring everybody back and that dips under the 25% or dips over into the 75% portion, then you are at risk of not being able to get as much forgiveness on the loan. Okay, operations. First off, and this is very obvious, but do a deep, thorough cleaning of your entire facility. Then start rescheduling canceled appointments. So go back to when you had appointments on the books for mid-March through mid-May and take and call those people first and get them rescheduled for when you're opening. Call all the patients that received consults through telemedicine to schedule their next appointment. That next appointment may be to schedule the procedure, or it could be to come back in for an in-person consult. The one thing is I recommend continue telemedicine for consultations and or applicable type treatments, wellness, medically supervised weight loss, products, that type of thing. This will reduce the traffic into your location. If you can get it done with them at home via telemedicine, make that happen. Continue to have that happen. It may be how we conduct business for a very long time, if not forever. Consider expanding your hours in the first few weeks of the relaunch, evenings and weekends. Two things happen here. One, if you expand your hours, you're able to do less overlap of certain staff members, so you have less people in your building. And two, there may be this pent-up demand that you want to take care of. The day you open your doors, there may be a considerable amount of business that wants to get in now. people who are past their Botox, who are past their fillers, things of that nature. Um, Utilize the proper affidavits and the various forms. Make sure you have a COVID-19 patient consent form signed. The American Society of Plastic Surgeons, ASPS, has a great one. There is a link in the PDF to that form. It's been made public, so anybody can use it. I highly recommend taking advantage of that. Okay, so besides your typical taking the appointment protocol, such as repeating the information about the appointment, who they're seeing, how much time do they need, what time to arrive, those types of things. Standard protocol for taking an appointment. Besides that, you need to instruct the patients, the clients, the following. Keep a minimum of 6 feet from other patients while in the practice. No guests may accompany you to your appointment. Please wear a face mask to your appointment. Only bring into the location a form of payment, no other items. And that form of payment you're going to ask for is credit card, right? So you can keep the payment process as safe as possible. No cash, no checks. Wait in your car for a text or call to be informed when we are ready to receive you. And download and complete the COVID-19 informed consent form prior to your arrival and bring it with you. Right? Very important. Place social distancing and sanitation protocol reminder signs strategically throughout the practice. So I would put one at the door when people come in, at the front desk, before or right after you enter the hallway to go down to the treatment room, in the bathrooms, the restrooms. If you do think it's necessary, in each treatment room itself. So that's important. Keep it top of mind, keep the top of mind awareness on social distancing and sanitation protocols, hand washing, basically. Set up touchless hand sanitizers. Now, I know this is asking a lot because you may not be able to find touchless hand sanitizers. They're out there. There's various types. And if you can, great. But you want to place these throughout your facility, outside or inside the restrooms, outside of each treatment room, at the front desk, at the door as you walk in your front door. And if they're touchless, all the better. Remove all books and magazines and any other handout material that is typically offered. Now, I know a lot of people have grab and go sort of brochures. So many of the manufacturers offer those types of brochures, the rack cards, as we call them, or the rack brochure. Take them away. It's too much of a chance that people will pick them up, they'll play with them, they'll sneeze on them, and they'll put them back. You don't want that happening. Remove all refreshments. Now, the one caveat here is if you want to offer water, which would be nice, identify a strategic counter, which may be your typical refreshment counter, and place the waters, I would say 6 inches apart, so that I can reach and grab a water without touching any of the other waters and stay safe that way. So that would be the one refreshment, and if it's done that way. Don't think, oh, we'll hand it over when they check in, we'll hand them from the front desk. No, you're handling their water. It's not something they want or you want to be doing. Have a schedule for sanitation at the front desk that is initialed each round. So on this sanitation schedule, you want to identify what they need to do each time. Now, each time could be every 30 minutes, every 60 minutes, your decision. Sanitize doorknobs, sanitize the lights, sanitize the bathroom, right? Sanitize the front desk, the front door. All these things should be listed and then initialed off by whoever does the sanitation on that round. Okay. You want to check and dispose of expired products before you open, and any supplies in the treatment rooms and of course your retail area. You may want to go back to your manufacturers. I'm not sure if they will, but see if they will replace expired products because you were closed for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it was, and help you out in that way. This is a good one. One of the practices in Virginia mentioned they were going to do this, and I thought it was great. Try to make your front door touchless, right? Get a door jamb and get that front door to just be open, propped open. They can do it. They're in a building where there's a lobby that walks right into their location. If your door opens directly to the outside, it may work this time of year with the weather. It may not work if we have a weekend like the one that's coming up in New England where it's supposed to get frost in May, this coming Saturday or Sunday. Store all tester units for future use or dispose of them if they've expired, right? We can't be using testers at this point in time, not until we're at the point where we have a vaccine. Place an unused pen and a used pen container at the front desk. So buy boxes of pens and put the unused, mark it unused, put the used, so they'll leave them in the used. Or some people are just saying, take the pen, right? Buy very inexpensive pens for this. And this would be to sign credit cards. It's not all systems allow you not to, all companies allow you not to sign, but check also with your credit card company. If you can get away without signing, that's great. The only thing I don't like about it is places that allow tipping. I guess you can start asking people, would you like to leave a tip? I can do that now, so you don't need to sign this. But oftentimes tips are left when they sign their credit card receipt. But definitely put that into a used pen container or let them take that pen home. If it goes into the used pen container, you're throwing them out or you're using hand sanitizers for those pens to get them clean again. Add a touch-free payment system. Now, this could be taking a credit card over the phone and putting it on file, but you have to be careful. You don't want to breach the various laws on privacy with credit card numbers. So you need to have a system that will take that credit card information in under that person's file, and then the system will allow you to charge that credit card even though you don't have the credit card with you. Not sure how many systems have that. So, another touch-free payment system would be Apple Pay. Another one would be maybe a PayPal type of system. Another one, which I pretty much recommend to everybody can do this, you have your device on, it has a fairly long connection usually, and it's sitting under what I'll talk to you about in a few minutes is the screen, the sneeze guard between you and the client, and you're telling them what to do. Take your credit card, place it into the credit card machine. Please do not touch the credit card machine while you're doing this. Now, keep an eye out. If they do touch it, just make sure you wipe it down. So that's really the best touch-free system that everybody can do, no matter what. Before you open, make sure you take an inventory of your back bar to determine how many treatments you can perform, and you order as necessary. I recommend ordering as few times as possible. If you normally have a par level that gets you 2 weeks with then having to order again, make it 1 month. The less people in your operation, in your facility, the better. The less deliveries you get, the better. Assess and create a restock plan for your PPE supplies. Again, the more you can buy at once, the better, but do not hoard, okay? If you need to purchase a month at a time, fine. Don't do anything more than that. If you want to do less, do less. But I would recommend identifying a few providers for PPE supplies so that if one is out, you can go to the other, all right? We're talking gloves, masks, gowns, and shields here. Implement a protocol requiring that certain areas, spaces in your facility do not exceed X employees. So you want 6 feet distancing. If you have a staff room that is small and 7 feet by 5 feet, that's probably only going to be one employee per staff room. Or a dispensary that's 5 feet by 6 feet, that's one employee in the dispensary at a time. Most likely, your front desk is going to go down to only one person, though if you can provide either separation or 6 feet of distance, then you can have two. Schedule an all staff meeting before you really get your operation open again. Go through all the policies and facility and health and safety protocols, along with identifying the special offers that you're going to have and the promotions or any other practice initiative. I don't know if I mentioned, I did say it, but I want to emphasize at the front desk, though this may be in the clinical section, I do want to emphasize that you should, not just should, you have to install sneeze guards, all right, plexiglass sneeze guards. Go on Amazon, go to a local glass or plexiglass store. They can build one for you. I saw one of our practices built a really nice, it's about 8 feet long, so that 2 people can sit behind it, and it just spans the whole space instead of being individual. So that's really important. And here's the other thing that's important to know. On the bottom here, we're talking about gloves, masks, gowns, and shields. If you can't get your hands on these items and you don't have them available, it does only one thing. It shuts you down. So really pre-plan on your PPE supplies, because you cannot open your doors and properly provide procedures and services without gloves, masks, gowns, and shields. Let's talk about some marketing recommendations that we have. First off, announce your reopening, of course, via e-blast, your website, and social media. Make it known to your clients and to the general public. You are back in business. The other place that you can do this and should do this would be your Google My Business location as well, and anywhere else on the internet that at the moment shows you as closed. Make sure you're now showing as reopened. I highly recommend on these in these areas where you're going to identify your current hours, then put additional hours. So instead of making your hours 9 to 8, when you're only used to be open until 6, I would put 9 to 6 and then have additional hours, 6 to 8, whatever day of the week it is, that type of thing. So it looks like this may not last. This is only temporary. And if you want to make it permanent, you just add it into the hours of operation. Put up a post-COVID-19 Q&A section on your website and your Facebook page. Communicate all the new policies, all the new procedures. Communicate how you're going to keep your patients safe. I saw this excellent video that Bill Marriott did, and it's on the Marriott's home, I believe it's on the home page, but definitely on a Q&A page, about all the things Marriott is doing differently, and they videoed all of this for safety procedures and various protocols to keep everybody safe and be careful about what you need to do right now. So I recommend you don't have to film $100,000 video. You can grab your phone, and as the owner or manager, somebody that the public knows, walk them through your facility and show them all of the things that you're doing. Show them how you have posted the hand sanitizer, and show them or show somebody in mask, gloves, shield, and gown. That's going to make them feel better, and that's going to draw them in and have trust and faith in you and your facility. And post that with the Q&A. Put that up on Facebook, put that up on whatever other social you have, put it up on your website. Okay, really important to discuss with your marketing agency or your website vendor adding e-commerce to your website, right? This will reduce the number of people coming into your facility, which is so important. So if you don't have e-commerce, talk to your marketing agency or your website vendor and make sure that you can get e-commerce connected in to your website. Restart digital ad spend at least 2 weeks prior to opening. This is assuming you have advance notice of executive orders, etc., right? We would say never stop digital marketing and/or start a month prior because it takes things to ramp up and get traction. But I'm saying 2 weeks here because I believe most people will have 2 weeks notice from the local government, the state level government, as to when their opening date's going to be. Contact those that subscribe to your membership. All right, so all of your members that have joined, we have practices that have 750 members. They all have to be called. You have to speak to them about your restarting. What didn't they receive? How are we going to schedule that in? This is going to be important. You may want to do this if you can prior to opening your doors, when you can put 4 or 5 staff members on this and just bang it out, get it done, but keep your members engaged and get them to fill the appointment book because they will be your first and as always, your most important clients. Offer comeback or reopening type specials for the first month or 2 of opening your doors. It could be as simple as really a thank you gift. You may think about, I think a good one might be hand cream, right? So right now we keep using soap, we keep using sanitizer on our hands. They're getting dry, they're getting brittle, they're beginning to get cracked. At least they were. When I first started this, I was like, oh, I have fine lines of like cuts on the back of my hand because I kept washing my hands, sanitizing my hands. So I then learned that, oh, you have to, in between every hand wash, use hand cream. Great add-on. For every procedure you have, you get a full bottle of hand cream. It will be greatly appreciated. Now, that's not the only thing I'm recommending. That's just, I think, a real obvious one that's easy to do. And talk to your manufacturer, see if they'll join in and take part in that as well. Maybe they'll give you the hand cream for a certain discount off what they usually sell it to you for. Remove any pop-ups from your website, right, that you had put up discussing the closure. It's now time to replace that pop-up with one that discusses the new hours, the safety protocols, and so that is the first thing they see when they go to your website. Adjust your Google My Business, as we were saying before, right? You want to make sure it reflects the fact that you're no longer closed, which hopefully you had adjusted it to say closed before. Now you want to show your new hours, your base hours plus your additional hours. Okay, what are some financial recommendations? Determine how much additional capital you're going to need to get your practice restarted, right? So you need money for marketing. You need more money for marketing than you were spending before. You have to relaunch your practice. You have to communicate into the marketplace. You're here and you're here for your clients and the general public. I would think you're going to end up spending 30% more than you were spending before to get restarted. This may only last for 3 months, but you need to think in terms of a punch to your marketing program if you've been quiet. Now, if you have not been quiet this dark period, right, you may not have to spend more money on marketing because you were there was top of mind awareness through the dark period, right? So keep that in mind. Of course, money to pay staff. Have you gotten the PPP loan? That's money to pay staff. Do you not have it? You're going to figure out how to pay the staff, because during the 2 weeks that the staff is working and you're bringing in some money, there's a good chance you're not bringing in enough money to pay everybody at the end of 2 weeks. So make sure you have some money put aside for that, unless you have that PPP loan or the EIDL loan. And keep in mind the deferments. you've probably gone for lease deferments and rent deferments and loan deferments. They're going to come due. And when they come due, you need to have the money ready for that. And you should think about putting that money aside so you are ready. Don't bank on the future. We don't know what the future looks like, right? I can't tell you you're going to be back at the same level of sales in 9 months. Now, I believe you should do everything right. You could be, but if we will find out, right? And that's what this is all about. We're going through something very different, economic downturn along with a pandemic. So if you have received your PPP loan, I want you to use the following best practices, and I'm going to go through each one, so that the forgiveness portion can be maximized. And you want to obviously maintain the compliance side of this too. I would recommend that you create a separate account for the PPP loan proceeds. You don't have to, it's not a requirement, but I think it's a best practice. Spend time also to develop a system to track and document how you plan to spend it. Go online, there's a few good, not inexpensive, free online spreadsheets that you can track your PPP with. Also, understand which of your operating costs are expected to be forgiven or expected to be forgivable under the PPP loan, right? It's really payroll related type expenses, health insurance and things of that nature. And it's also occupancy, your rent, the interest on a mortgage if you own the building, your utilities. Ask your PPP lender what documentation they will require you to submit, because each one is responsible to support and review your calculation of the loan forgiveness. So go to the lender, not the SBA. They want the lender to handle this portion. Go to them and say, what will you ask for? What will you need? So you cannot wait 8 weeks and then start gathering it up. While you're doing it over the 8 weeks, gather it up. Once you submit, and if you gather it up over the 8 weeks, you can immediately submit. The banks have, I believe, 2 months, basically 8 weeks, to give you an answer about how much that is going to be forgiven. As the rules and the guidance can be complex, and they change very frequently, you may want to either spend time to develop some expertise in the PPP loan forgiveness, or definitely engage a lawyer or possibly an accountant to assist you. I was on a webinar yesterday with RSM, which is a large accounting firm. It's the one we use here at Akara, and it was an excellent webinar that provided quite a bit of guidance on the loan forgiveness of the PPP. Okay, a little bit about legal and regulatory. Ensure that you are following the latest shutdown executive orders for non-essential or elective medical practices. So you want to stay in compliance there. Prior to opening, check everybody's credentials and make sure you have what you need. You should keep it on file in their employee file. And some states, some counties, some cities want certain credentials posted in the location. Licenses for the esthetician, for the nurses, or whoever it may be. Good housekeeping item, right, to do while you're closed down. Continue to provide timely and fact-based information to your employees. Really important to continue to communicate to your employees. Stay connected, right? Once a week, have probably a non-mandatory meeting, only because mandatory meetings have to be paid if you have everybody on furlough. Just to stay connected, just for everybody to touch base and see how you're doing. Ensure that your company is following the Fair Labor Standards Act when employees are diagnosed with the virus. Review your obligations under the ADA and FMLA, which, by the way, was modified last month by a recent legislation that was put into place. On this, check with your labor attorney, really important, so that you know you're within the obligation of these rules, because small businesses under 50 people didn't have to abide by FMLA before, and now there's parts of it that they do have to abide by. Ensure that employee medical information remains confidential. So if you find out somebody is sick, unless it has some impact on the other staff, and you should disclose that they have come down with the virus, you really should keep it confidential. So if it happened after everybody's been gone for a few weeks, clearly no one, if you're not in the location, could be infected. So it's their private medical information. Contact the Aesthetic Business Institute. You can talk to Erica. She is the executive director of the Institute, to be introduced to a medical healthcare attorney if you don't have one. We have a great one that we work with quite a bit, and she can make an introduction. What are the clinical recommendations we have? First off, all clinicians wear masks, shields, gowns, and gloves. And after each procedure, they should take off their gowns and their gloves and throw them out. All right, so it's one set of gloves and one set of, and use the disposable gowns, and one gown per procedure. Have all non-providers wear masks. Now, I'm not saying gloves for them. Wearing gloves is kind of silly because, you know, COVID-19 can be on gloves as well as being on hands. So if you're wearing gloves, every time you touch something, you have to rip off those gloves and start again. Every time you touch something, all you have to do is wash your hands or use a sanitizer, right? With alcohol content, I think it's 60% or higher. So I don't believe there's any reason why your front desk personnel or your manager of your operation needs to wear gloves, but they need to follow protocol on hand washing. Consider disposable in lieu of washable materials, so or reusable materials in your treatment rooms. Patient leaves the room, a client leaves the room, throw everything out that they were touching, whether it be a disposable blanket, paper on the table. Then you wash everything down, of course. It's very important. Check with your local and state regulatory agencies for access to PPP in your area. That may be, if you're having a hard time with your standard vendors, that could be a route to take. Here it is, install plastic sneeze guards at your front desk, which is just very important to have. Keep your team and your clients safe. Sanitize each room between patients, as we were talking about. Wipe everything down. Anything they touched or could have touched when you weren't looking, you never know. Wipe it all down. Block 15 minutes between appointments in order to properly clean. Now, this may change, right? So keep an eye on that. If you're finding that's too much, adjust it. And you're going to get better at doing this and faster at doing this as time goes on. Something else that I don't have, it's in the list, that the written list, but not on the presentation. You may consider actually hiring an MA to do nothing but to be the person sanitizing everything, helping with room changes, standing at the front door and greeting and accepting clients, patients into the practice. So consider that. You may need to incur that charge, having an extra MA on staff at all times. Limit the number of scheduled appointments to the number of treatment rooms occupied by a provider. Now, what do I mean? If you have 6 rooms, you should have, and you have all 6 rooms with a provider that can offer a service in all 6 rooms, then you have 6 appointments that can happen at the same time. If you have 6 rooms but only 4 providers, you only schedule 4 appointments in there. Don't have somebody use 2 rooms, because it's going to be too difficult to jump from room to room and clean in between. And I just highly recommend you don't do that. If you offer services where patients disrobe, make sure there's disrobing and placing their garments on either a chair that you can sanitize, that's not a cloth upholstered chair, maybe a leather chair or a hard surface chair, or on the back of a door that you can wipe down that whole door and the hook. So that's really important. Screen all your employees and patients prior to entering the practice. Now, if you have employees that come in 5 days a week, for 5 days, you will take their temperature. For 5 days, they will complete an affidavit and sign it saying they don't have any of the following, which would be things such as a fever, etc. And of course, every employee, every patient needs to sign an affidavit. And on the downloadable PDF with this webinar, you will see what needs to be on that affidavit, or what should be. If you want to add things, that's fine. But at a minimum, what we have listed in this document. Okay. I'm sure you most likely have some questions, and it's 10 of, so we definitely have a few minutes.
All right, so thank you, Fran. Wonderful webinar and great information. If anyone has any questions, if you can please submit them using the questions feature on GoToWebinar, we will start to collect those and go over them. Give everyone a minute to enter in any questions they may have. We do have a couple that have come in throughout the webinar itself. So the first one, Fran, and something you were just talking about towards the end here, but a little bit more clarity regarding consent forms. So this question reads, I know we have consents for clients, but we are curious about any consent consideration for staff returning to the employee.
I think by making the offer to return to work, they're consenting to work at your location. They clearly know what you do, what they do for a living, and what risks may be out there. So I don't know if it is necessary, though there's no harm to it. And actually what I'm saying with the consent form, it's not a consent form. What I'm saying, the affidavit saying they don't have a fever and they haven't been out of the country and all those things, that's one side of it. So they're actually an active part of saying, I don't believe I have COVID-19. So I don't know if it would be necessary. Again, definitely something that you can do. It's take the patient consent form, modify it, and have your staff sign it. Certainly can be possible.
Okay, perfect. And as Fran referenced, there is a document, a corresponding reopening checklist that's available to all attendees. That's in the handout section on GoToWebinar. You can go ahead and download that, and there's documentation and supporting resources available to all attendees. Okay, and Fran, kind of hand in hand with the question regarding staff members, this also is related to returning staff members. How do you suggest dealing with staff members that are giving a practice a difficult time returning to work? Whether that's, they're giving difficulty regarding returning because they're making more money on unemployment and want to stay on unemployment, or also, they're concerned about their health and safety.
Okay, so you can't force anybody to come back to work, right? The one good thing is if it's well documented that they turned down the job, they won't be counted in the PPP forgiveness calculation. The IRS did come out, or the SBA did come out and state that as long as it's documented that they are not coming back and they've denied the job, which puts them at risk to lose their unemployment because it's actively documented. So that's already been handled and you don't have to worry about that. And you can't force anybody to come back to work. It is their choice. You can only offer the job.
Okay, thank you. Actually, since you just brought up the PPP, regarding the PPP loan, can you clarify the abide by 25% payroll reduction or deduction comment you made?
Sure. So in order to get full forgiveness on the payroll, of the 100% of the money being used, at least 75% of it has to be used for payroll and related. The other 25% can be used on rent, the occupancy costs, the rent, utilities, mortgage, interest if you own the building. So what I was referring to is that 25% rule. You don't want to, you want to make sure that the team is accounting for 75% of the forgivable amount of the PPP. Is that clear, Erica?
On my side, it is clear. Of course, if anyone has any further questions that they'd like to submit via the questions box, please feel free. But I think you explained the 25% difference that can be used for other resources amongst the practice versus just employment.
And I highly recommend that you work with your accountant to figure out and determine the PPP forgiveness and how you're calculating it and how you're documenting it.
Okay. Actually, follow up to that came in. Is forgivable determined by dollars or FTE?
Okay, so you also this is another test they want you to do. They are wanting you to equal the same number of employees, or FTEs, right? So, and it's interesting with the FTEs, it is unsure. I was on this webinar yesterday, and the accountants were unsure what SBA will consider as an FTE. Is it 30 hours? Is it 35 hours? Is it the old rule of thumb being 40 hours, but most likely it's not. It's either 30 or 35, but there's no clarity on this in the documentation yet. So again, I go back to, you need to work closely with your accounting firm, take webinars from the bigger firms that have more access to the SBA, direct access, like an RSM, a Deloitte, whatever.
Okay. In conjunction with that, if I haven't applied for any government aid yet, what should I do? Is it too late?
No, it's not too late. I believe there is some PPP money remaining. You still can apply for EIDL money. You still, some states have their own state funds. Many are closed. I'm not sure. You have to check with your own state, but do it quickly. It's going to be passed at some point.
Okay, thank you. Great questions still rolling in. Thank you, everyone. If you have more, please feel free to submit. Another question came in. Can the affidavit be checked off over the phone before a patient comes in for their appointment?
I would think so. I mean, I guess the legal side of this is, I would recommend just ask your attorney what they want, what they would recommend to keep it as legal as possible. The thing is, I was on another webinar over the weekend, and a well-known attorney was providing it. It's causation, right? Who can prove that they got COVID or they gave COVID to somebody at your location? It's almost impossible, if not impossible, to show what the cause was. But I think it's good to have the affidavit. It's only for your own safety. Basically, you're saying to me, I want you to sign off that you know you're healthy. And that's more not about the legal side, but more about the safety of your team and the other patients.
Right. And perhaps the affidavit could be emailed and electronically signed prior to with an electronic signature versus just over the phone. That would allow for, a
Yeah,
stand.
definitely on that, Erica. I think I would do that prior to just having the recipient of the appointment check off a box saying, I got the verbal approval.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. In conjunction with that, is the COVID patient consent form from ASPS required for med spas?
No, there's no requirement. It's just advisable.
Yep. Okay. And we have another question in a specific location. We are located in the tri-state area where spas are still not opening, are still not allowed. When we have the green light, we are still concerned about performing peels with just PPE. Any thoughts for better staff protection? Any other recommendations to better protect staff?
I'm not quite sure if there's more protection than using a mask, a shield, a gown, and gloves. Essentially, you are completely covered. It's what they're doing. It's best practice and protocol in hospitals. So I think you're safe. But if you want to, your medical director would be your final say on something like that, right? Because they, as the medical director, everything related to the practice of medicine, they they own, right? So turn to your medical director and say, is this safe enough? Ask them if you don't feel you're safe enough, and don't do it. Don't compromise yourself. It's not worth the risk. If you don't feel it's safe enough, don't do it.
Right, absolutely. Safety is number one. I know we've heard from some of our practices that some locations are opening up and performing treatments and services that would not require the patient to take off their mask yet either. So, maybe it's a phased approach in terms of certain services that you're first opening when, the green light is turned on in terms of procedures and treatments versus others that maybe are more dangerous to perform or could allow for
And that's
transmission.
glad you mentioned that, Erica. The providers should be wearing the N95 surgical type mask versus
Hmm.
just a regular mask. The regular mask could be provided and used by your administrative staff, your receptionist, but in the treatment room, use what they're using in the hospitals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I do believe that covers the questions that have come in this afternoon. Thank you, Fran. Just for reiteration for everyone, the handout is available for download for all attendees regarding the reopening checklist, as well as this recording and webinar will be sent out to all attendees for review. Fran, I'd like to turn it over to you for any closing remarks.
Okay, great, Erica. Thank you so much. I just wanted to let everybody know that right now, the Aesthetic Business Institute has a special offer by using the offer code of ACARA 500. You would receive lifetime access to the Aesthetic Business Institute. And along with that, you would receive 3 one-hour coaching calls. This would typically be about a $2,750 offer. And right now, by using this code, it's being offered at $1,500. So it really is helpful if you have questions throughout the process of reopening, relaunching, and what to be doing. You'll have all the answers between everything that's on the Aesthetic Business Institute site, the online learning site, combined with 3 one-hour coaching calls with an ACARA Partners consultant. Also, if you want more information about what we talked about today or about ACARA Partners, reach out to Alex Acunzo. His email is up there on the screen. If you want more information about the Aesthetic Business Institute, joining it or becoming part of it, reach out to Erica Collins, ecollins@acarapartners.com. Before we depart, I just want to say a big thank you to frontline providers. MedSpa A10 thanks you, ACARA Partners thanks you, and the Aesthetic Business Institute thanks you. And a call out, obviously, to nurses right now. This is Nurse Appreciation Week, and we definitely appreciate what you're doing and the difficult job that is at hand. And thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.